Australia, a land of sweeping vistas and bustling modern cities. But once, it was an untamed frontier, its hills and rivers hiding a secret that would change everything. The story of the Australian gold rush isn't just about striking it rich. It's a saga of exploration, politics, and the birth of a nation. From the early discoveries to the frenzy of the 1850s, this is a tale of how gold transformed Australia forever. When we think of Australia's gold rush, one name often stands out: Edward Hargreaves, whose 1851 discovery near Bathurst triggered a frenzy. But what if I told you the story of gold in Australia began much earlier? In fact, multiple gold finds had already occurred across New South Wales, Tasmania, and Victoria years before Hargreaves' famous strike. The real gold rush was not just one moment. It was the culmination of efforts from explorers, scientists, and even a reverend. In 1841, Reverend William Brandwhite Clark discovered gold particles in the Blue Mountains. But his excitement was quickly dampened. Governor George Gipps, fearing unrest among the convicts, discouraged Clark from publicizing his find. Gold, it seemed, was too dangerous for a young colony built on convict labor. In 1848, mineralogist William Tipple Smith discovered gold near Bathurst. This discovery, as history would later prove, was the first payable gold find in Australia. But despite this, it was Edward Hargreaves who would receive the credit, and the government reward just a few years later. Hargreaves may have been the spark, but the flames of the gold rush were lit long before his name was etched into history. The world's eyes weren't on Australia in the 1840s. They were glued to California. The gold rush that exploded in the United States in 1848 drew tens of thousands of people, including many from Australia. This wasn't just a social shift. It created a major problem. Workers left New South Wales in droves, abandoning farms, workshops, and businesses. The colony's economy suffered. In response, Governor Charles Fitzroy took bold action. Desperate to reverse the economic downturn, he issued a call for gold discovery. The hope was simple. If Australia could find gold, it could hold on to its workers and revive its economy. Fitzroy wasn't going to leave it to chance. In 1849, he appointed Samuel Stutchbury, a respected geologist, to explore the land and hunt for gold. And for those who found commercially viable deposits, the governor offered rewards. Australia's race for gold wasn't just a wild hunt. It was carefully encouraged by the colony's leaders. In the wilds of Australia, many had found traces of gold. But it was Edward Hargreaves who had claimed the spotlight. Fresh from the sun-drenched goldfields of California, where he'd tasted both fortune and failure, Hargreaves returned to Australia with a burning belief. The soils of New South Wales held similar treasures. He wasn't just seeking gold. He was searching for redemption. Hargreaves knew he needed more than just luck. Armed with techniques learned from the American West, a handful of basic tools, and a vision of transforming his fate, he ventured near Bathurst, determined to make history. His excitement grew as he reached Lewis Ponds Creek near Orange, a place where the land shimmered with possibility. And then, on a day that would echo through time, in early 1851, he struck gold. It was a moment that would ignite a fever across the colony. News spread like wildfire, and within months, thousands of men, women, and even children from across the world descended upon the region. They came by foot, by horseback, and by ship, leaving behind farms, homes, and families, all in search of the glittering promise of wealth. Hargreaves, ever the self-promoter, took full advantage of the frenzy, securing his place in history as the man who sparked Australia's gold rush. However, as with all great tales, there was more beneath the surface. Though Hargreaves had ignited the flame, the truth was more complicated. Years earlier, William Tipple Smith had discovered the first payable gold near Bathurst, but his find went largely unnoticed. The history books, written by those in power, favored Hargreaves, the adventurer with the gift of gab. But in the quiet corners of Australian history, Tipple Smith's contribution still glimmers, waiting for its proper due. But the fever that swept across New South Wales did not stay confined to its borders. In the same year that Hargreaves struck gold, miners uncovered even richer fields in the neighboring colony of Victoria. Ballarat and Bendigo became the epicenters of a new, unprecedented rush, one that would forever transform Australia. In just a few short years, Victoria's population exploded. By 1854, it had overtaken New South Wales as the wealthiest colony in Australia. Miners from across the globe, Europe, China, America, and even distant islands flooded into the region, chasing their chance at unimaginable riches. Ballarat and Bendigo became legendary names, spoken in hushed tones by those dreaming of gold. But the rapid growth brought with it challenges. The colonial government, eager to capitalize on the gold rush, imposed harsh mining licenses. These taxes were heavy burdens on the diggers, who already faced the perils of rough living and disease. As the dream of instant wealth collided with the harsh reality of taxes and labor, tensions began to rise. In 1854, these tensions boiled over into rebellion. The Eureka Stockade, a bloody standoff between miners and colonial authorities, became a defining moment in Australian history. The diggers, demanding fair treatment and political representation, erected barricades and armed themselves for battle. They fought not just for gold, but for their rights, unleashing a wave of revolutionary spirit across the land. Though the rebellion was crushed, its impact was undeniable. The Eureka Stockade became a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry for democratic rights, and a reminder that the Goldfields were not just about wealth. They were about the fight for fairness. The blood spilled on that cold December day would lead to political reforms that reshaped Australia's future. The Goldfields weren't just about mining. They became a melting pot of cultures. Immigrants from China, America, Europe, and even nearby New Zealand flocked to Australia. The diversity on the Goldfields was unprecedented, and it reshaped Australian society. But this sudden influx of people from around the globe didn't come without challenges. Tensions often flared, particularly between European and Chinese miners. Racial hostility boiled over, culminating in events like the Lambing Flat riots, where European miners violently attacked Chinese workers. Despite these conflicts, the gold rush laid the foundation for Australia's multicultural future. It was a time of hardship and hope, where cultures collided, but also where communities began to form and shape the nation we know today. As the century drew to a close, the easy-to-reach gold deposits began to dwindle. Large-scale mining operations, backed by corporations, took over, pushing out individual miners. The once booming goldfields began to quiet, and towns that had sprung up overnight started to fade. But while the rush for gold came to an end, its impact on Australia did not. By 1900, the population had grown, cities had developed, and the economy had strengthened. Australia was no longer just a remote British colony. It was a thriving nation on the brink of federation.